So, friends, as we continue to work our way through the Matt Gaetz House Ethics Report, let's take on three questions today. One, did Matt Gaetz have a full opportunity to tell the committee his side of the story? Two, why didn't the House Ethics Committee issue any sanctions against Matt Gaetz? And three, what was the Department of Justice's role in this investigation? Let's talk about that, because justice matters. Hey all, Glenn Kirshner here. So friends, first off, happy holidays to everyone. Let's continue to work our way through the Matt Gaetz House Ethics Committee report. And before we tackle those three questions I mentioned in the opening, let's remind ourselves of the findings entered by the bipartisan House Ethics Committee. Quote, the committee found substantial evidence of the following. From at least 2017 to 2020, Representative Matt Gaetz regularly paid women for engaging in sexual activity with him. In 2017, Representative Gaetz engaged in sexual activity with a 17-year-old girl. During the period 2017 to 2019, Representative Gaetz used or possessed illegal drugs, including cocaine and ecstasy, on multiple occasions. Representative Gaetz accepted gifts, including transportation and lodging, in connection with a 2018 trip to the Bahamas in excess of permissible amounts. In 2018, Representative Gaetz arranged for his chief of staff to assist a woman with whom he engaged in sexual activity in obtaining a passport, falsely indicating to the U.S. Department of State that she was a constituent. Representative Gaetz knowingly and willfully sought to impede and obstruct the committee's investigation of his conduct. Representative Gaetz has acted in a manner that reflects discreditability upon the House. Let's turn to question one. Did Matt Gaetz have a full and fair opportunity to tell the House Ethics Committee his side of the story? Quote, Representative Gaetz was uncooperative throughout the committee's review. He provided minimal documentation in response to the committee's requests. He also did not agree to a voluntary interview. On July 11, 2024, the committee issued a subpoena to Representative Gaetz for his testimony. He did not appear, despite having received notice of the date and time of the deposition. The committee then sent Representative Gaetz a set of written questions to which he issued a public response that ignored most of the direct questions about his misconduct and mischaracterized the committee's investigation and his participation up to that point. Friends, that seems to answer that question. Let's turn to the second and third questions, and we're going to answer them in combination. The second question is, why didn't the House Ethics Committee issue some sort of sanction after it made those findings regarding Gaetz' conduct? And two, what about the Department of Justice's role in all of this? Because there has been extensive reporting that DOJ investigated Gaetz' conduct to see whether he should be charged criminally. Well, here is what the Gaetz report reveals about those two questions. Quote, while the committee considered whether to establish an investigative subcommittee to consider sanctions against Representative Gaetz, the committee ultimately determined that it would not risk further victimization of the women involved in this matter. Most of the women with whom the committee spoke also gave statements to DOJ, the Department of Justice, and urged the committee to rely on those statements in lieu of requiring them to relive their experience. They, the women, were particularly concerned with providing additional testimony about a sitting congressman in light of the DOJ's lack of action on their prior testimony. DOJ refused to provide the relevant statements and other significant evidence to the committee. DOJ cited internal policies about protecting uncharged subjects, like Representative Gaetz, general concerns about how DOJ's cooperation with the committee may deter other victims in other matters, and various inapposite policies relating to congressional oversight of DOJ itself. DOJ's initial deferral request and subsequent lack of cooperation with the committee's review caused significant delays in the investigation. Those delays were compounded by Representative Gaetz' obstructive efforts. Okay, friends, so where does that leave us? The House Ethics Committee said it found, quote, substantial evidence, close quote, of misconduct by Matt Gaetz. But here's the thing. I'm an old career prosecutor. Substantial evidence, as announced by a congressional committee, really doesn't translate to the criminal law. What we know is that the Department of Justice, for whatever reason, opted not to indict, not to criminally charge Matt Gaetz. We don't know why that is. It could be a lack of evidence. It could be a statute of limitations problems. Maybe the time frame that the Department of Justice had to indict Matt Gaetz had expired. It had run. Maybe it was for a lack of admissible evidence. Maybe it was because the cooperating witness, Joel Greenberg, was as cruddy as the day is long. Remember, Matt Gaetz' associate, Joel Greenberg, pleaded guilty to all kinds of horrific crimes and is serving a lengthy prison term. As part of his plea agreement, he pledged to testify truthfully about what Matt Gaetz did, but of course, prosecutors decided for whatever reason not to bring a criminal case against Matt Gaetz. So the fact that a House Ethics Committee found, quote, substantial evidence, close quote, of wrongdoing by Matt Gaetz doesn't really mean much in the practice of criminal law. Now, if prosecutors believed they had probable cause, that's a term of art in the criminal law, probable cause to indict, to charge, to arrest Matt Gaetz, and if they thought they could build that evidence to proof beyond a reasonable doubt, the standard to convict somebody at a criminal trial, well, then they should have brought charges. They opted not to, and importantly, Matt Gaetz has maintained his innocence. So I don't really know what it means, substantial evidence is found by a congressional committee. But friends, even setting Matt Gaetz aside for a minute, what I do know from having worked at the Department of Justice for decades as a federal prosecutor is that there are times that the Department of Justice does not go aggressively enough after what I always refer to as the ruling class criminals. People of power and influence and wealth and connections. Part of the problem, part of the reason we are in this morass, this ugly and dangerous place in our democracy today is because the Department of Justice did not aggressively enough go after the ruling class criminals. One example I often cite are the members of Congress, current and former, 6 of them, I believe, total, who asked for pardons for what they had done on and around January 6th, including Matt Gaetz. The only reason you ask for a pardon is because you know you've committed a crime and you want to get away with that crime. And one sure way to get away with your criminal conduct is to be issued a presidential pardon, which the Supreme Court said way back in 1915 In the Burdick case, a pardon carries with it an imputation of guilt, and accepting a pardon is at least some confession of guilt. And Matt Gaetz and other members of Congress, current and former, asked for pardons for what they had done on and around January 6th, and those folks have never been made to account. That's part of the reason we are where we are, because we don't apply the laws of our nation equally against the rich and the poor, the powerful and the powerless, the influential and those with no influence, no voice, and no connections. And we are not going to progress as a nation until we make that right. Because justice matters. Friends, as always, please stay safe. Please stay tuned. And I look forward to talking with you all again tomorrow.